Hello, Gwilym. You're just about to say Mark, aren't you?
I love that bit. Did they ever hear that?
No, no one ever hears it.
Oh, honestly,
No,
the intricate production detail that the public just thinks this is thrown together. But oh no, hours of production.
Do you know what? It's a really exciting day today. It's my 10th anniversary in CIPA.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what a fantastic difference we can see from 10 years ago.
I hope so. I wrote a little bit for Twitter this morning and tweeted it. I've done a slightly longer LinkedIn post that I'll stick on later on. But yeah, thinking about how things had changed. And so I'm hoping it's changed, and I'm hoping it's changed for the better.
Oh, I get loads of feedback from outside saying how well it's going. It's awesome. CIPA's doing really well.
We are. Yeah, we do seem to be all over all sorts of things at the moment, which is really exciting. Stuff we can't talk about, which is terribly frustrating.
Should we just not talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Yeah. What can't we talk about?
That.
Ah, okay. Won't talk about that then.
Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the two IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property, brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
I don't know what to talk about now.
Well, be quiet for a minute while we're not talking about it. What can you talk about? What can you talk about?
I've got a house full of COVID people. I am the only one. There's 4 of us in the house at the moment, and I'm the only one to be without COVID, which actually means that I'm the one that's isolating in the house. It's just easier for me to lock myself away in a single room and have food brought to me.
I quite like that. It's the reverse, but still makes a lot of sense.
I'm allowed to go out. I go out through the back door and through the garage, and then go to the shops and get shopping for them and stuff like that. But otherwise, yeah, I've got 3 lepers sort of lepering around the house.
Are they lepering together? So they're hanging out like lepers?
Yeah, well, they've caught it sort of off one another, I imagine, at about 2-day intervals. So
does that include the really old man who walks around in his underpants behind you sometimes?
No, he's not with us. Yeah, we've had to. He was due to be coming today, so we've had to say the really old man in his underpants is my father-in-law.
Sorry.
And sometimes he doesn't have the underpants on.
Oh, it's disconcerting when we're podcasting in the news.
The trouble is, when I'm in meetings, I never know he's going to appear until he kind of walks across behind me. And there's always that terrible moment of, has he got any clothes on at all? Anyway, we probably ought not dwell too much on old men's dangly bits going behind me. Okay. So shall we crack on with the podcast?
Go on.
Wow. Today we're going to be talking about, I don't even know how to properly say it. I think it's diversity and inclusion. Might be diversity and inclusivity, and I never properly know how to say it.
Is it diversion and inclusivity?
It's not diversion. It is definitely diversity.
Let's focus, right? We should focus, right?
So if I just continually talk about it as D&I, then I'll say it properly, and everyone will know what we're talking about. And we've got 2 people with us today. One, a council member, and one, a member of CIPA staff, who are both fairly influential in the D&I space, if you can call it that. So I'll ask them to both introduce themselves. Greg, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Greg Iceton. I'm a senior associate at Downs, and I'm also the committee chair of the D&I committee for CIPA. And as you mentioned, I'm also a CIPA council member, and I think I've been a CIPA council member now for about 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. Oh, I did do a little check earlier. 4 years.
That's it's flown by.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, if that's okay. But let's get
of course.
Let's get Kereiss's voice on the podcast as well. So, Kereiss, introduce yourself. Although you're a friend of the podcast, you've been on before.
I am a friend. Hi, I'm Kereiss Isles, and I am an events coordinator at CIPA. And I think I've almost been working here for 3 years. I think it's coming up 3 years in July, so it's gone really quick.
That's mad, isn't it? Because I still think about you as being the baby of the team.
Oh, I still am.
Aww.
I still am. I'm getting older by the year, but call me young still. It's fine.
We'll need to fight, because you've just been promoted, haven't you? Which is brilliant.
I have, yes. Thank you.
So we'll have to try and find a younger team member to replace you, so that you're not a baby anymore.
Oh, I don't know. It's a bit of competition there, I think, Lee.
Greg, I just thought I would abuse the fact that we've got you on, and you being a council member. We keep saying that we're going to get council members to come on and talk about what it's like being on council. So can we start there? I mean, we probably don't need to tell the story of how you got onto council, because that would embarrass both of us, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would. But yeah, I mean, I really don't think we should. Well, I think that might have to be something off podcast, I'm afraid.
I met Greg for the first time in old CIPA Towers. I think it was after a new student event that we had done there, and we stayed on into the evening, and we had an evening of it was an extended work event. Let's say that with wine and
free
cheese.
drink.
Yeah, wine and cheese and nibbles and stuff like that. And I thought, here's an interesting bloke. I won't tell you why I thought here is an interesting bloke, but here's an interesting bloke. Let's see if I can get him on council. And,
Is it because I had a cardboard box on my head?
You did actually have a cardboard box on your head, yes. that you had drawn a face on and cut eye holes in and stuff like that. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly the sort of person I want as a council member.
Mm.
Gwilym's looking shocked and stunned.
No, shocked and stunned. Just utterly fascinated. Greg, come on, what's going on?
Well, when I went to CIPA Hall, I live in Munich actually, so
It doesn't get
for me, yeah. So I don't get back to my roots, let's say, much. So like getting back to the UK and being able to go to CIPA Hall, and I think it was was it an awards ceremony?
It was awards, wasn't it? Yeah.
I didn't get one, obviously, so I put a cardboard box on my head. But yeah, there was just lots of white wine, and yeah, Lee came over to speak to me, and we got talking, didn't we, Lee? And then you had said, "Oh, I think maybe you should put yourself forward for council," and I laughed. then actually thought about it, and at that point, it was 2000 and. But when was it? 2018.
17, 18, yeah.
17.
Yeah.
And I recognised that we had a lot more patent attorneys over here in Munich. So I really thought actually it wouldn't be a bad idea to get on the council as part of a representation for people in Munich as well. Because obviously we have all the regionals going on in the UK, and I suppose Munich is almost like a unofficial regional area of patent attorneys. So that was one of the driving forces for me to join council. And there was an election in the year that I joined, so I had to do one of those little paragraphs of who I am and what I want to do and things. And yeah, since then, just been on council, and I think it's a really, really great way to meet peers, and also, it's quite an important aspect of CIPA, and it really is quite important that we have people that are engaged in the council, and that we, do what we need to do for the institute.
Kereiss, do you want to say a little bit about what you do as a member of staff, and how you found yourself at CIPA?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I'm an events coordinator. I used to be an admin generalist for CIPA, and I actually am a chair for the staff D&I working group. And I think I got into the staff D&I working group in 2020, but I became the chair of it last year, May, I think. And Dwayne was the actual chair for it at first. So yeah, it's coming up 2 years for the staff D&I working group. And in terms of me actually getting into CIPA, it kind of just fell into my lap. I'd never actually heard of CIPA before. I'd never heard of IP. I'd never heard of anything to do with like IP, or I didn't associate it to that, I guess. My initial thing was to actually become a lawyer. I wanted to be in family law or criminal law.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was like my goal and everything, but unfortunately things did not work out that way. And actually, I say unfortunately, but I'm thankful for it because of where I am now. But at the time I really, really wanted to get into it, but I couldn't. So I decided to go down the admin route, and I got tons of experience in working in a school and just kind of working about. And then I came across this job, and I had applied for this job and actually for an apprenticeship legal administration job at a law firm. And I got calls from both companies on the same day offering me the job. And I remember literally sitting with my mum, like, I don't know which one to do. Like, I'm really unsure. And it was all very confusing. And my mum was just like, go with what you feel is best and what you feel would benefit you in the future. And I ended up choosing CIPA. And since then, it has benefited me in many, many ways. And I'm very grateful for it. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it.
And we're very glad that you did, because you're an invaluable member of the team. That's really good to have you on board. Shall we talk a little bit about D&I? So CIPA's been active in the sort of D&I world for quite a while now, but we've done it by proxy really through IP Inclusive. I probably don't need to explain that to most people on the podcast, but I'll just say a little bit about it for anyone who might be new or outside the world of IP. So IP Inclusive is an organisation that spans all of the various aspects of the IP world. So the patent attorney profession, the trademark attorney profession, paralegals, administrators, the IPO itself is involved, so people who work in the IPO. It's a pan IP professional organisation that seeks to improve the environment that we all find ourselves working in, make it more welcoming. Also does outreach work to try and encourage more people to consider careers in IP. So it's doing some really, really good things. But I was certainly conscious, and actually we were challenged by the lead of IP Inclusive, Andrea Brewster, in a council meeting that CIPA ought to be doing more of its own back. That it was all right investing in IP Inclusive and supporting it, but sometimes it meant that we didn't necessarily think about the really patent attorney world things that we ought to be thinking about. So along came the staff D&I group, and along came the D&I committee of council. So, Greg, come to you first, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why did you put yourself in the position of being chair of the D&I committee?
Yeah, obviously you mentioned then that Andrea came to council to ask us to consider putting something together in CIPA. And obviously we took a bit of time getting there. But I think that one of the most important things is that I feel quite strongly about D&I. When the opportunity came up to start a committee, I kind of just put myself forward to do that.
Why do you think, and a question for Gwilym as well, because Gwilym's a council member, obviously. Why did you think it took us so long to get the D&I committee sort of going? I mean, we talked about it at council for, it seemed to be forever. I looked back at minutes this morning, and it was about 7 months between council deciding it would have a D&I committee to us actually arriving at the position whereby we had a chair of it and we're going out to the membership to look for members. Why did it take us so long? Why was it so difficult to get that committee started?
I think a lot of people on council do a lot of things, and I do think that it would be another thing for someone to do might be too much work, or it might be too much. On the other side, is it something that people interested in? Is it something that people feel that it's important for us? Maybe considering that IP Inclusive is so big and has such a presence in our profession, is it something that we should be doing? So I think that a lot of those discussions, I guess it just took a while to get to the final outcome, really.
It is a challenging option, isn't it? And I think we're so delighted you went for it, Greg. I think people looking at that and thinking, oh gosh, where do I start with this? But it is huge. But I think you've got to start somewhere. So it's brilliant that you've done it.
I think that, obviously, that we're only young in the start of this D&I committee, but the conversations that we are having in the committee meetings are very relevant, and we have a lot to discuss, and an hour and a half probably isn't enough time in the committee meetings to do it, but I think that we have the right structure. We meet quarterly, and I think that's the right amount of time for us to be doing that, and over time we'll start ironing out these issues that we see not only in CIPA but perhaps with our members, or the members that the organisations that the members are part of. I think that obviously for a D&I committee in CIPA, we need to be holding the institute to account for D&I matters, but also our members as well, which is quite important, I think.
Kereiss, we didn't have the same sort of inertia on the staff side. You guys decided to have a group, have a committee, and you had one within sort of a short period of time, and it was up and running. How did that committee come about? If let's call it a group so we don't confuse the committee and the group. How did that group come about?
Okay, so the group came about in 2020, and if I'm being quite honest, it mainly came about because of the events that happened in 2020. So Black Lives Matter, the tragic deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, those I think were what really like got us thinking. And I think at the time, for me personally, I was actually trying to figure out a lot of stuff for myself, you know, in terms of my background and culture, and really understand the type of world that we're living in. I don't think I ever really took it in properly as to the issues that we're dealing with on an everyday basis. And I think that comes with a little bit of privilege as well, because I've not been exposed to it as some people may have. And so that got me thinking, and me and Dwayne were speaking about it. We was having some very I think angry conversations, honest and angry conversations, but it really helped us understand each other, I think, and what we would like to bring into CIPA, and hope that everyone can also help with. So I think it just more came out of interest, and it was something that we knew that we didn't have anything D&I. And so we just wanted to kind of push forward with it and see what we could do, see what differences we could make. We knew that we didn't know everything, and we was willing to be able to learn along the progress of everything. So yeah, that's pretty much how it came along.
Cool. You right at the start of that, you talked about some what I would call external influencing factors. Don't want to talk more about those. I want to talk about more of those in my big reveal at the end. But just hang on to them for the moment, if you wouldn't mind. And we'll come back to them. Greg, switching back to the D&I committee. I know it's you said it's early days, and it really is 2 or 3 meetings. That's all.
Yeah, about 2 or 3 meetings.
And I know you're still trying to work out terms of reference and objectives and stuff like that. But even though it is early days, are there obvious things on your radar now, or are you still trying to tease all of that out?
Yeah, I mean, you know, within the second meeting, we got onto a point which is obviously quite important, is gender neutrality in communications that we send out to our members, and trying to become more D&I aware of sending out communications to our members and things, trying to keep that gender neutral if possible. So that's something that we're trying to work towards, and certainly supported by all the members on the D&I committee. So, you know, hopefully we can get to do that in the future. The other things that we were looking at were, you know, perhaps the difference of socioeconomic availabilities for all really within the profession. You know, we tend to have quite seems to be quite an elite set of characters in the profession, which is all good. You know, we need to have diversity and inclusivity across the board. But I think personally, you know, there can be some times where the profession can be quite seen as snobbish. So I think that we need to hone in on certain aspects of trying to level out opportunities available to all.
So you're talking there about sort of like the social mobility side of things.
Yeah, I mean,
people coming from less privileged backgrounds and
exactly. And I think that, you know, I mean, you can obviously tell that I'm from the north, but you know, there's been times where people have sort of made connotations to my accent.
No, I'm really rubbish at these things. So
right.
I don't know whether I would have said you were from the north, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to pinpoint it to a bit of the north. Where are you from?
Where am I from? Well, I'm from Munich. I'm German now, but no, I'm from a little town called Yarm, which is in North Yorkshire, which is just near Middlesbrough.
Okay.
But,
so Yorkshire, anywhere near Knaresborough?
Yeah, it's not far from Knaresborough.
Okay, so that's the only reason I know is because that's Mother Shipton territory.
Yeah, Old Mother Shipton's cave.
So let me just diverge and tell you a little bit about Old Mother Shipton.
What is this podcast about again?
So there are only 2 pubs in the UK called the Mother Shipton, and one is in Knaresborough, and the other is in Stampshaw in Portsmouth, where I grew up. And and the thinking behind it is, so it's on what would have been the old track that became the A3, and Mother Shipton was known to advise Henry VIII from time to time. And the story is that she travelled down to Portsmouth during the sort of the war with the French when the Mary Rose sank in the Solent, and that she had advised Henry VIII not to launch it. It was going to sink and all that sort of stuff. And he put her up at an inn in the sort of on the A3 road coming, what is now the A3 road coming through Portsmouth. And that inn is now the Mother Shipton pub. So there you go.
And then did she travel all the way up north?
She must have gone back again, yeah, presumably.
Oh, right. It's just going backwards and forwards in the country. Brilliant. That is interesting.
I bothered to do a little bit of research into it because I mean it was my local when I grew up. I was drinking in there from the age of about 13, obviously, as you did back in those days. And I was just fascinated why it was called the Mother Shipton and why it had this kind of effigy of an old witch outside. Well, I thought it was an old witch. It wasn't. It was a kind of woman in
was Mother Shipton
period.
It was Mother Shipton, old witch, honestly.
Anyway, perhaps we need to do a podcast on Mother Shipton and the petrifying cave and stuff like that. But
it is quite interesting to visit. Like, I haven't been since I was little, but like,
Greg, I've never been, and I really desperately want to go. So,
it's a really beautiful part of the country up there in North Yorkshire. Obviously, I'm biased.
Can I come back to D&I?
Yeah, if you must.
Yeah. Yeah.
Greg, I mean, everything you focused on, you've mentioned already. There's so many areas that we have to work on. I think social mobility, weirdly, it seems to be in the middle of everything sometimes, doesn't it? There's so many obstacles to social mobility that come not just from your background, but also from gender and ethnicity and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
What are your early insights on that one?
I actually think that from the committee members that we have, obviously, we'll probably get onto this at some point, but we have to compile quite a bit of data to find out where we are within the profession. But from the conversations that we've had in the committee meetings, it seems that the profession's quite progressive in trying to overcome these hurdles and barriers and things that might have been there in the past, and that includes things like redacting CVs so that we can basically just focus on people's strengths of their academic ability and things like that, and maybe focus on the degrees that they've done rather than where they've done them and how they've performed and things. I mean, obviously there's certain information that you need to know within those CVs, but I think a lot of it to do with like home address and things like that can be redacted, and you really then selecting the candidates based on the merits rather than what might have come before of selecting them based on where they're from or which university they went to, things like that.
I think that makes tons of sense. I have to say, one of the areas of training that I've always felt I could have done with, I didn't really know what I was doing when I started, was actually a bit of help in just had to kind of mix with clients and other providers. In particular, I'm going to be a bit rude here. Lawyers and solicitors and barristers, they scared me so much when I started. I could have done with some real training in dealing with that. And I can, it's a tiny echo. I know it can be, I'm not suggesting for a moment that I didn't have a nice, easy background. But even so, you get this sense of just how difficult it must be when you're out of your depth socially. It's one of the most difficult things to overcome, isn't
it? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I went to Heal University in Staffordshire, and I do remember being at a CIPA event and someone telling me that I'd fallen through the net, and you can imagine how sad that made me feel. Because obviously I'd been hired on the merits of my abilities academically, and I found that to be quite shocking and sad, actually.
Lee, are we allowed to say tosser on the website on the podcast? Is that allowed?
Fran, if you could just make a time mark at this point and
That's horrible. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's awful.
I mean, you know what? Like, I think it made me stronger because it made me want to think and show that I can do this. But not everyone is like me, and I think that if people still have that mindset, and don't forget, I started the profession in 2007. I do think we're in a different place now in 2022 than where we were in 2007, and it was very early on in my career. So, I think a lot's changed since then. But it didn't. It was hurtful, and that made me feel like I had barriers that I had to overcome. But and of course you can see why that D&I and that aspect of D&I is quite important for me. And of course, there's lots of issues with diversity and inclusivity that we need to get to. And the committee meetings are just going to take a long time to go through these elements. You know, there's lots of things like, you know, race, sexuality, discrimination, things like this, and social mobility and things like this. And we have to work through all of them. Of course we do. It's a part of our commitment that we're going to be making in our terms of reference to our members.
I read something the other day. I'll try and dig it out for you, Greg, because actually Gwilym will find it interesting as well. It was about the social mobility piece, but it was actually it was speaking quite negatively about people who have come from less advantageous backgrounds and made it, and that there is a tendency to pull up the drawbridge. This you know, I've got there. I did it by the virtue of hard work, and you know, others are going to have to work as hard or harder than me to get where I am. It's not my job to make it easier for people, which I found quite fascinating because, you know, if you look at me, anyone who knows me now without knowing where I came from would see me as fairly typically white, middle class, successful, all of those kinds of things. Yeah, you know, I'm a ex-apprentice plumber from Portsmouth who fell out of school with very little by way of qualifications. So I consider myself to have been quite socially mobile, but I also consider myself throughout all of that time to have been always trying to enable others to do the same, to help others do the same. But yeah, it was a fascinating piece about the way that isn't the norm. The norm is for people to pull the drawbridge up behind them, which I find fascinating.
And there is an element there of an ingrained prejudice, I think, in the UK actually, about how, you know, there's them and us. And if you make it to being one of them, then you're not sure that. There's a lack of confidence in your own background, isn't there, that behind that, I think.
Oh, you always feel like an imposter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I certainly do. I wake up in the middle of the night, in the middle of a dream where I've been found out.
I mean, imposter syndrome is, you know, it really is a thing, and I get it. And I came from I feel like I was very privileged growing up, but I think you know, looking around the people at such events and things, I think for me it felt a bit different to if we had it in Yarm at the George and Dragon, you know.
Kereiss, can I ask a really invasive question? And
Sure.
Apologies if it doesn't feel right to have it on the podcast. We can take it out.
Nice.
You talked about your ambition to be in law and be in family law. Why didn't it work out?
So it's really annoying actually. So I obviously did my GCSEs and I didn't get the best GCSEs, but I got all C's, so that's good enough for me. But when I went to college, I wanted to do English language and English literature and law, but I couldn't do law. I think it was because I got a C and not a B. So that completely just derailed my whole way of being able to get into it at all. So I ended up going into legal secretary and I did a legal secretary course instead because I thought that might be a way to get into the law industry somehow. So yeah, but I always think about if I did get that B and if I did continue the course, where I'd be now and how different my life would be. But yeah, it didn't work out like that. So
do you still harbour ambitions to be in the law?
No, I don't want to be a solicitor or a lawyer or anything, but I definitely do enjoy being in the law industry, whether that's just learning about it, just like in general, or actually being in like a profession where they do some type of legal service. I've always had some type of interest in it. I don't really know what drew me to it because no one ever really spoke about it in my family necessarily. So
I now understand why you've been so active and supportive of IP Pro Bono.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, two of my biggest things, or one of my biggest things whenever I go into anything is that I always want to be able to help someone. And that's what I do. So that's IP Pro Bono was perfect, and IP Clinics is perfect because that's literally what you're doing. You're giving someone advice and you're able to help them. Yeah,
mate, we're so lucky to have you. We really are. Let me move us on a wee bit. I was being interviewed on a podcast just last week. It's not come out yet. when it's out, I'll flick a
Oh,
link
to me,
around.
you won't stop talking about it, Lee.
I've now mentioned it on 2 CIPA podcasts in the hope that by the time any of them goes out, that I might actually be live on the air. So it was about purposeful leadership. But the interesting thing was we didn't actually talk about this bit on the podcast, but afterwards the guy who was interviewing me said, you must have some views on how professional bodies deal with everything outside of the immediacy of their profession. And I do. So he sent me a little paper that he had written, and it talked about the fact that in the future, professional bodies will not be able to be insular. They won't be able to only be inward looking and think about the issues that are impacting on the profession. They'll need to recognise that they operate in multiple environments that are very complex, and they have to interact with. And the sorts of things that professional bodies have always been silent on, but won't be able to be silent on in the future: climate change, politics, including things like currently cost of living, war in Ukraine, potentially the fake news agenda, all of these kinds of things, sustainability, and also D&I. And so I've been doing a huge amount of thinking on that over the last week or so, and I'll probably try and get together with a few other chief exec friends, maybe when we're back in the real world, and do some proper thinking around this. This takes me back to the point that Kereiss made earlier about it being external factors, Black Lives Matter, the tragic deaths that she spoke about, that caused the CIPA staff group to emerge. But these are really difficult things for professional bodies to talk about, particularly, I think, a body like CIPA, where our members work in so many different industries and sectors where you could potentially say something that is prejudicial to the areas in which they work. So it's a question to Greg and Kereiss, but actually it's also a question for me and Gwilym. I'm asking this question of all of us. When it comes to these kind of really sticky external issues, how comfortable are we with having a voice? How comfortable are we that CIPA could say something about Black Lives Matter, could say something about sustainability or climate change, and that not grate with members or be uncomfortable for members? Sorry, that was quite a long question, wasn't it? Take from it what you will.
So it's a good question, though. I mean, I think it certainly is something that needs. It's hard, isn't it? I mean, that's a really good question, Lee. I mean, do we feel like we can speak out? My immediate answer is no. because we're so worried about, as a professional body, we're so worried about upsetting our members. I guess that's because they are so diverse in terms of opinions, and there is concern as a professional body that you would be upsetting people, and you need to. There's a fine line there. You need to keep your members happy. We need to make sure that our members are aware that we understand them and understand their feelings, things like this, and opinions. But of course, I do think it is important that we have a voice as a professional body.
Can I add in?
Yeah. I think you're going to have quite an interesting take on this, Kereiss. So go on.
I don't know if I have an interesting take. I personally, from the campaigns that we've done with the staff and D&I working group, I've actually find it quite challenging not to step outside of external conversations about anything else, really, other than like anything that could possibly affect the IP industry. I find it very difficult myself not to do that, and mainly because I think the issue is that we are trying to ensure that we are being inclusive and diverse to everyone, and everyone's going to have a difference of opinion. However, the way I see it is I view it as CIPA is a person, and everyone has their own opinions. And yes, we may upset members, but I don't know. I feel like we need to look at it as just an everyday thing and not as a profession, not as something that's going to be affected by opinions, and just say it as it is, because it kind of will then, I don't know how to make this sound okay, it will kind of pick out those people that may be who may disagree with us, I guess you could say.
So let me say something, and you can tell me whether I'm being fair or not. let me say it all first before you shout at me. I think that you and colleagues in the D&I group may at times have been a bit frustrated with me, and maybe with Neil also, although he's not on the podcast to defend himself, because I think at times we've asked the D&I group to not go into areas that it wanted to go into because we felt that was too challenging for us as a professional body. And on reflection, I think I've been wrong in the past, and I think we need to take a little bit more of a risk. I probably need to have this conversation with council, and we probably need to get to an understanding about the things we can and can't talk about. But we've always tried to come back to, we can only really talk about stuff if there's an IP angle on it. And I think where I've got to in the last week or so in terms of the way I've been thinking about this is that actually CIPA's got a greater kind of social responsibility than that as a membership association. And we probably ought to stray into areas that might sometimes feel a little bit risky for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To chuck in a comment on that, I think all kinds of corporate organizations are starting to look pretty much for the first time at purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's the buzzword, isn't it?
Purpose is the buzzword. Yeah.
And you've got this whole B Corp thing that I've just been hearing about you have to sort of big accreditation thing, but when you're a B Corp, you have actually you combine profitability and purpose or something. And it is an alien, certainly to I think my generation of people and businesses, it's a very alien concept. But I'm not averse to being introduced to it. And I think we should give our members a chance. Because we just assume that they won't like it, and maybe they won't, but I think we should give them a chance because they might say, no, we don't mind having a purpose. And we're all science. Well, Pat and Tony, I'm a scientist. I love reducing it to numbers. I was just drawing a little Venn diagram actually. And I've got as far as one of the bubbles in the Venn diagram is things we can all agree we need to get better as a society. Like sustainability, like diversity, and like a whole bunch of other things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of things else in there as well, like cancer, curing cancer and dealing with poverty and all kinds of, there's a vast number of things that we can't do all of it. And then I think I've got another bubble in my Venn diagram of things that CIPA can possibly actually make a difference to. And that brings it down a lot, but diversity is definitely still in there, and hopefully sustainability in there as well. And then probably the third one, I haven't worked out the third bubble because I'm thinking on my feet here. It's along the lines of what fits in with what CIPA is trying to achieve anyway. I can see an intersection between all of those things where there's some things that we can actually make a difference to, which kind of fit in with what CIPA is here for anyway, and which aren't going to offend anybody because it's very difficult to disagree that sustainability is a good thing, So there's an option there, I think. We should give our members a chance. I believe in them.
I agree. I think when it comes to sharing awareness about D&I, we shouldn't stop halfway. I think we should, if we're going to do it, we should just do it, And I agree with what you said, Lee, about being a little bit frustrated at the start, but obviously I've understood it and I'm trying to find the balance, I think. But if there is room of conversation about going a little bit further, that would be great, because I feel like, we have such a great influence and we should use that in all aspects of D&I.
Look, guys, we've been going for about 40 minutes now, which is where we tend to aim for on the podcast. But I've still got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. If you're both happy to stay with us for a few more minutes, if that's
that's no problem. Yeah.
So the biggie question, really, in terms of the two groups that you lead, so the committee and the staff group, what are your 2 or 3 big issues that you think those groups need to address? You don't need to answer them, and they don't need to be things on your radar now, but if you could get those groups to look at something, what would be those big issues?
I mean, I don't want to say anything that might put down any other issues, which I don't know. I mean, the biggest issues for us at the moment, is getting the data and processing the data and being able to understand what we need to do in view of that data. I'm not saying that data is the be all and end all, but we do need to have a very good overview of where we are with D&I within the profession. And to be honest, that's the challenge that we're facing right now, is how do we collect that data accurately?
I think it's fair to say we really don't have it.
We don't, and we might never have it, but we need some sort of overview of the profession of our members, so that we know how we're doing. That's the struggle.
Kereiss, what about the staff group? Is there one big thing they want to solve?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just getting people to understand why D&I is so important. I think that is literally the biggest thing. You can look at all of the D&I aspects of it, but you need to get people to understand why before they can actually make a difference. If you're not understanding the reason why and the purpose as to why you're doing it, then it kind of, yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Completely agree with that. I think that's something that the committee also needs to push forward, and we need to be asking questions that people can answer. We don't even need to answer them, but they need to be aware of them, need to think about them, and things like that. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Kereiss.
Shall I tell you what I had on my list with that?
Go on.
ahead.
I might not. I'll ask Gwilym at the moment what he's got on his list. So the sorts of things that are on my list. It's very easy for me to have a list because it's you guys that need to do something about it, not me. I did have data on, Greg. That was one on my list, and I'd also made myself a little note that and then what we do with it, which is exactly what you said, because data without action is just data. On my list I had, how do we make people care about D&I, both in our profession and in the kind of world in which we operate, because it feels to me that we have a number of people who are really passionate about it. It's really important for them, and then we've got the rest of the iceberg which sits below the water level, and it's how we make those care about D&I. I don't have an answer to it. I just think that that's probably one of the things that we need to crack. And the final thing I had on mine was, and we've done some work on this in the staff team. Actually, we had some internal staff podcasts that we knew would never go anywhere apart from the staff group, and that was to give people a voice. So how do we help people speak up about the barriers, the injustices, the discrimination, the experiences they have? Because in the world that Greg, you and Gwilym inhabit, it's high profile, high pressure, combative at times. You're not meant to have weaknesses. It can be quite difficult talking about barriers in the workplace, injustices in the workplace. How do we help people speak about those? I don't have any answers. So those are my three questions: data and the use of it, how we make people care about what we're doing, and how we help people talk about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at Gwilym now to see whether he's got anything in his kind of bag of things he's going to sort out.
The one that gets me, and it is possibly outside those three Venn diagram bubbles I just mentioned, because I'm not sure that CIPA can solve this one, but it's the earlier opportunity point for me. I think it worries me how many doors are closed to people long before they're old enough to make the right decisions. And Kereiss, your kind of story there about one GCSE grade changed your career path. Maybe not for the worse, but it stopped you doing what you wanted to do. Yeah. And that was a long time ago. That was early on, and for that to be something that is determinative to that level worries me enormously. And the idea of being able to go a bit earlier into kind of people's developments and help out. And like I say, that might be a bit tricky for CIPA. I've got a couple of ideas about how we can help a little bit, because we do have a really talented bunch of people who can make a small difference. But it always worries me that it's so difficult to get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, I agree, Gwilym, actually. Something I'm really interested in because of my experience, that I would love to one day help fix, whether that's in CIPA or outside of CIPA, and that's actually giving people the opportunities much earlier and understanding what's out there much earlier and preparing them for it, because you really do just get knocked down sometimes, and you have this big dream and then it just gets knocked down by like one thing. And I know so many people that are in that position or have been in that position. And
everyone, we've got an interloper on the podcast.
Fran's going to speak.
Fran is going to speak.
Hey, Fran.
I was just wondering if I could say something on this as well. I'm part of the staff D&I group with Kereiss, and it's something that we've been talking about a lot. But I think with regards to kind of making people care or making it more easy for people to open up about D&I stuff, I think the consensus is it has to start at the top in an organisation. Like if the people who are calling the shots and making the policies are seen to be whether it's mental health, diversity matters, if they're the ones making it the norm to talk about something, or that it's okay to mention something or bring something up, then it will filter down a lot quicker, which is why I am grateful that we have Lee, because Lee has made it a lot easier for us to feel confident and open about expressing our opinions when we were in the office, when we were stuck at home. The whole way through, we've never felt like we couldn't say something, which has been very useful.
So kind and generous of you, Fran. And I'll tell you what, if that's all I've done in 10 years, I'll take that. I think I've done a little bit more. But if that's, if someone has to say, what's your biggest achievement at CIPA, making it feel more inclusive, more open, more capable to support one another, that'll do me. I'll take that. Greg, Kereiss, it's been lovely having you on. Is there anything else you want to say? Have we not covered anything that you were hoping we would talk about?
No, I think we've covered everything. I'm just grateful to have this opportunity, really.
I did. No, I've got nothing else. I did think that you said that we had an antelope actually in the podcast. I didn't hear interloper. Sorry, I heard antelope. So I was sat here going, "Where's the antelope?"
Is that a bit like Gwilym's bring a goat to a meeting?
So yeah, no, I've got nothing else to say. I think that was a really good hashtag discussion. Thank you very much.
I can add something.
Go on, mate.
Which is happy 10th anniversary at CIPA, Lee. It's been brilliant, and we want another 50 years, please.
I can probably
Absolutely.
I can probably give you a couple more, but I'm starting to feel very old.
Surely more than a couple.
Yeah, hopefully more than a couple. Yeah, just how I feel at the moment. Thanks. Thanks all. Lovely having you on. Great topic to talk about, and I'm sure we'll pick it up again in the future. And Gwilym, I'll see you on the next one, mate.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.